was wondering how long it would take before you came back. Not because I doubted you. No. Because I knew something you didn't. I knew the story wasn't over. I knew the ending they wrote for you wasn't the real ending. And somewhere tonight, somebody is staring at a screen with shaking hands because a file they prayed would stay hidden just got opened. A receipt just dropped. A truth escaped. And now everybody's losing their minds. You hear that? That sound isn't panic. It's recognition. Because deep down they always knew. They always knew they messed with the wrong one. See, the funny thing about people is they think power looks loud. They think power announces itself. They think monsters arrive roaring. But the most dangerous things in existence don't make noise. Cancer grows quietly. Rot spreads silently. The ocean doesn't scream before it drowns a city. And you learned something terrifying. You learned how to suffer in silence. That's where they made their first mistake. They thought your silence was surrender. They thought your patience was weakness. They thought your distance meant defeat. No, you were collecting evidence. Not evidence against them. Evidence against the version of yourself that used to need their approval. That's the receipt nobody talks about. The most devastating receipt isn't proof that they lied. It's proof that you survived without them. Because survival is insulting to people who wanted your collapse. Think about that. Nothing enrages an enemy more than discovering they were never necessary. Nothing terrifies a manipulator more than realizing their favorite victim learned how to breathe underwater. And that's why they're panicking. Because the receipts just dropped. Not on paper, in reality. Your life became the evidence. Your growth became the evidence. Your scars became the evidence. Every prediction they made about your failure became another receipt, proving they never understood who they were dealing with. You see, people love saints until saints stop obeying. Then suddenly they call them psychopaths. People worship angels until angels grow teeth. Then suddenly they call them demons. That's the game. That's always been the game. The world doesn't fear evil. The world fears unpredictability. A predictable demon can be controlled. A predictable hero can be manipulated. But what happens when you're both? What happens when kindness learns strategy? What happens when compassion learns consequences? What happens when mercy gets tired? That's when the room changes. That's when the atmosphere shifts. That's when people start checking exits, because they don't know what you're capable of anymore. And uncertainty is the purest form of fear. See, they built an entire psychological prison around assumptions. They assumed your limits. They assumed your tolerance. They assumed your breaking point. They assumed your future. Then one day, you stopped behaving according to their script. And suddenly the entire machine started malfunctioning. Error, error, error. The version of you they understood no longer exists. The version of you they studied is dead. The version of you they mocked became the foundation of someone they can no longer predict. That's why they're obsessed. Not because they hate you, because they can't calculate you. And people fear what they can't calculate. Look around. The strongest people you've ever met weren't born strong. They were manufactured. Pressure built them. Betrayal shaped them. Isolation sharpened them. Humiliation educated them. Pain evolved them. Pain is the most expensive university on earth, and you paid tuition in blood. Every sleepless night, every abandonment, every betrayal, every fake smile, every moment you sat alone questioning your worth. You thought those moments were destroying you. No, they were documenting you. Receipt after receipt after receipt. Proof of transformation. Proof of adaptation. Proof of mutation. That's what terrifies them. Because normal people recover. You evolved. There's a difference. A massive difference. Recovery returns you to who you were. Evolution creates someone entirely new. And the person standing here now, the person listening to my voice right now, is not the same person who entered the fire. The fire did what fire always does. It revealed what couldn't burn. You know what's beautiful? The people who hurt you accidentally became your architects. Every insult was a brick. Every betrayal was a hammer. Every rejection was another layer of armor. They were building the thing they feared most. You. Imagine the horror. Imagine spending years trying to destroy somebody, only to discover you manufactured your own nightmare. That's where the receipts get interesting, because the evidence isn't what happened to you. The evidence is what happened after. The evidence is that you're still standing. The evidence is that you're harder now. Sharper now, calmer now, more dangerous now. Not dangerous because you seek revenge. Dangerous because you no longer need it. That's a different level entirely. Revenge chains you to the past. Indifference frees you from it. And nothing confuses enemies more than somebody who stopped needing their downfall to create their happiness. See, they expected rage. They expected emotional collapse. They expected obsession. Instead, you became focused. You became disciplined. You became patient. You became strategic. And strategic people are terrifying because they don't react. They calculate. They don't scream. They observe. They don't chase. They position themselves. By the time others notice the game, strategic people already own the board. That's what happened. While everyone was watching drama, you were building. While everyone was gossiping, you were transforming. While everyone was celebrating your supposed downfall, you were becoming the thing they wouldn't know how to stop. And now the receipts are dropping. Now the consequences are arriving. Now reality is presenting evidence. Not evidence of who you were, evidence of who you've become. The truth is, you scared them the moment you stopped explaining yourself. The moment you stopped defending yourself. The moment you stopped begging to be understood. The moment you realized misunderstanding can be a weapon, because predictable people are easy to attack. Mysterious people are difficult to target. They don't know what you're thinking. They don't know your next move. They don't know your limits. And because they don't know, their imagination starts torturing them. Fear always creates monsters larger than reality. That's why silence is so powerful. Silence lets people write their own nightmares. And trust me, the nightmares they're writing about you are magnificent. Somewhere tonight, somebody is replaying every moment they underestimated you. Somebody is reviewing every insult, every dismissal, every betrayal, every laugh, every cheap shot, every attempt to keep you small. And they're realizing something. They weren't fighting a victim. They were provoking an evolution. They weren't burying you. They were planting you. And now the harvest has arrived. The receipts just dropped. The proof is everywhere. The person they tried to break became the person they can no longer ignore. The person they dismissed became the person they're secretly studying. The person they mocked became the person they're quietly watching. Funny how that works. Yesterday they laughed. Today they're taking notes. Yesterday they judged. Today they're analyzing. Yesterday they felt superior. Today they're wondering how you did it. But here's the final receipt. the one nobody wants to talk about, the one hidden beneath every victory. You didn't become powerful because you defeated darkness. You became powerful because you stopped running from it. You met your shadow. You looked directly into the parts of yourself nobody else was allowed to see. The anger, the fear, the jealousy, the rage, the loneliness, the chaos. And instead of pretending those things didn't exist, you integrated them. That's real power. Not becoming an angel, not becoming a demon, becoming both and choosing your own direction. Because the strongest person in the room isn't the saint, and it isn't the psychopath. It's the person capable of being either one. The person who understands both sides. The person who controls the monster instead of denying it exists. That's you now. A paradox, a contradiction, a beautiful disaster. Too dark for the light, too bright for the darkness, too calm for chaos, too chaotic for order. Impossible to predict, impossible to replace, impossible to forget. And that's why they're losing it. Not because a receipt dropped, not because a truth leaked, not because a secret escaped. They're losing it because reality finally confirmed what they feared from the beginning. They didn't mess with somebody weak. They didn't mess with somebody ordinary. They didn't mess with somebody temporary. They messed with somebody who could turn suffering into fuel, betrayal into education, isolation into strategy, and pain into power. They messed with the wrong one. And now the evidence is everywhere. Welcome back. There you are again, still listening, still awake. Good. Because what I'm about to tell you is the part nobody survives hearing unless they're willing to lose the person they used to be. You think the receipts are finished dropping? No. Those were only the opening pages. The real file hasn't even been opened yet. See, everybody loves talking about the moment you win, the comeback, the glow-up, the revenge, the success, the applause, the headlines, the part where the crowd suddenly pretends they believed in you all along. But nobody talks about the terrifying middle, the graveyard, the dark hallway between destruction and rebirth, the place where nobody claps, nobody notices, nobody cares, the place where you became dangerous. That's where the real receipts were created. Not when you were shining, when you were bleeding. Not when people admired you, when they abandoned you. Not when people celebrated your existence, when they treated you like a mistake. That's where evolution happens. Because pain is a strange thing. Pain doesn't care about your feelings. Pain doesn't negotiate. Pain doesn't ask permission. Pain enters your life like an armed robber and starts stealing everything. Your certainty, your confidence, your innocence, your trust, your comfort, your illusions. And at first, you hate it. Of course, you do. Anybody would. But then something strange begins happening. The same fire that burns away your weaknesses starts revealing your strength. The same darkness that terrified you starts sharpening your vision. The same loneliness that almost broke you starts teaching you independence. And one day you wake up and realize the thing you feared most became your greatest teacher. That's when people lose control of the narrative, because suffering was supposed to destroy you. That's the deal. That's how the universe usually works. Pressure crushes things. Storms destroy things. Fire consumes things. Except you. You violated the rules. You did something that makes people deeply uncomfortable. You got stronger. And humans have a weird relationship with strength. They admire it from a distance, but they fear it up close. Because real strength exposes weakness. Real strength reminds people of every excuse they've ever made. Real strength forces people to confront what they could have become. That's why some people secretly pray for your downfall. Not because they hate you, because your existence makes their comfort feel cowardly. Think about that. The moment you refused to quit, you became a mirror. And most people hate mirrors. Mirrors don't lie. Mirrors don't flatter. Mirrors reveal. And when people look at you now, they don't just see your success. They see every moment they surrendered when they should have fought. Every dream they abandoned. Every excuse they protected. Every fear they obeyed. That's why your growth irritates them. That's why your confidence bothers them. That's why your silence haunts them. Because every step forward you take is evidence that excuses were never the real problem. And evidence is dangerous. Receipts destroy illusions. You know what's funny? The people who underestimated you were never studying you. They were studying a version of you that existed years ago, a snapshot, a photograph, a ghost. Meanwhile, the real you kept evolving, changing, mutating, growing teeth, growing claws, growing discipline, growing patience, growing wisdom. And now they're standing in front of a stranger wearing your face. They recognize the body, but not the spirit, not the energy, not the presence. The old version would have begged. This version observes. The old version would have explained. This version smiles. The old version would have reacted. This version calculates. That's terrifying, because reaction is predictable. Calculation isn't. And here's the part that should make your blood run cold. The strongest transformation isn't visible. The strongest transformation happens internally, when your enemies stop being your enemies, when your haters stop mattering, when your wounds stop controlling you, when your past loses its authority, when your fears lose voting rights in your future. That's when you become something rare, a person who cannot be manipulated. Do you understand how dangerous that is? Manipulation only works when somebody owns a piece of you. Your validation, your approval, your insecurity, your guilt, your fear. But what happens when those chains break? What happens when nobody can pull your strings anymore? You become unpredictable. And unpredictability terrifies people more than violence ever could. A storm is frightening, but a silent ocean is terrifying, because you never know what's moving beneath the surface. That's you now. People seek calmness, but they don't see the calculations. People see patience, but they don't see the discipline. People see silence, but they don't see the war being won internally. That's why they keep making mistakes. They mistake peace for weakness, stillness for surrender, kindness for vulnerability, mercy for inability, until reality teaches them otherwise, until the receipts arrive, until consequences start speaking, and consequences always speak louder than words. Look at your life. Every scar is a signature. Every betrayal is a chapter. Every disappointment is a receipt. Proof that you survived things that would have ended somebody else. Proof that you're not built from comfort. You're built from impact. You're built from pressure. You're built from collisions with reality. And reality is the greatest sculptor of all. It breaks everything fake, everything artificial, everything weak, until only truth remains. That's why the strongest people often have the darkest stories. Not because darkness made them evil, because darkness forced them to discover their own light. And here's the paradox nobody understands. The strongest light isn't born in daylight. It's born in darkness. Stars only matter at night. Diamonds only form under pressure. And legends are created when ordinary people survive extraordinary pain. That's why you're still here. Not because life was easy, because it wasn't. Not because people were kind, because many weren't. Not because the road was fair, because it wasn't. You're here because somewhere along the way, pain introduced you to a version of yourself that comfort never could. A version with sharper instincts, stronger boundaries, greater vision, deeper awareness, and an almost supernatural ability to keep moving forward when everything says stop. That's why they're panicking. That's why they're losing it, because the receipts aren't exposing who you used to be. They're exposing who you've become. And the truth is far more frightening than they expected. You didn't become bitter. You became wiser. You didn't become hateful. You became selective. You didn't become broken. You became rebuilt. You didn't become weaker. You became refined, like steel, like a blade, like something forged in conditions that would have destroyed lesser materials. And here's the secret they never wanted you to discover. The moment you stop seeking permission, you become unstoppable. The moment you stop waiting for validation, you become free. The moment you stop asking the world who you are, you begin deciding, and that decision changes everything. Because identity is power. The world can only control people who don't know themselves. The world can only manipulate people who need instructions. The world can only own people who are afraid to stand alone. But you survived the loneliness. You survived the confusion. You survived the uncertainty. You survived the darkness, which means the world's favorite weapons no longer work. And that's what they're feeling. That strange sensation, that growing panic, that uncomfortable realization, the realization that they no longer have access to the person they once controlled. That person is gone, buried, finished, dead. In their place stands someone else, someone calmer, someone colder, someone wiser, someone who learned that survival isn't enough. Transformation is the goal, and transformation is exactly what happened. The receipts prove it. The scars prove it. The silence proves it. The growth proves it. The obsession of your enemies proves it. The attention of your doubters proves it. The fear hidden behind their laughter proves it. Because deep down, they know something. They know they witnessed an anomaly. They witnessed somebody enter hell and return carrying blueprints. They witnessed somebody lose everything and discover themselves. They witnessed somebody become the very thing adversity was supposed to prevent. And somewhere tonight, while they're trying to understand how it happened, while they're replaying old memories, while they're searching for the version of you they once knew, you're already moving toward another evolution, another transformation, another level they can't imagine. And that's the most terrifying receipt of all. Because if this is what happened after everything you've survived, what happens next might be something nobody is ready for. And that's where the story becomes dangerous. Because most people think transformation has a finish line. They think one day you arrive, one day you heal, one day you win, one day you become finished. But evolution doesn't work like that. Evolution is greedy. The moment it gives you new eyes, it shows you a bigger horizon. The moment it gives you strength, it introduces a heavier weight. The moment it teaches you survival, it starts teaching you mastery. And that's what they still don't understand about you. They think they're watching the final version. They think the receipts explain everything. They think the file is complete. No, they're reading page 1. The terrifying truth is that every version of you they thought they understood was merely a temporary disguise, a checkpoint, a shell, a cocoon. And every time they thought they had you figured out, you changed. Every time they thought they knew your limits, you expanded them. Every time they predicted your collapse, you adapted. That's why their minds keep breaking. Because the human brain craves certainty. It wants labels, categories, definitions, boxes, heroes, villains, saints, psychopaths, angels, demons. But what do they do with someone who refuses to stay in a box? What do they do with someone who can be compassionate without being weak? What do they do with someone who can be ruthless without being cruel? What do they do with someone who understands darkness but refuses to worship it? What do they do with someone who has every reason to become a monster, yet chooses discipline instead? That terrifies them, because discipline is more dangerous than rage. Rage burns hot and dies fast. Discipline burns forever. Rage is a grenade. Discipline is a guided missile. And somewhere along the journey, you stopped being driven by emotion alone. You started becoming intentional, calculated, focused. The storm didn't disappear. You learned how to steer it. The monster didn't vanish. You taught it obedience. The darkness didn't leave. You made it work for you. That's real power. Not pretending darkness doesn't exist. Not lying to yourself about your scars. Not painting fake smiles over genuine wounds. Real power is looking directly at every broken piece of yourself and saying, "You work for me now." That changes everything. Because once pain becomes fuel, nobody can use pain against you. Once rejection becomes motivation, nobody can use rejection against you. Once loneliness becomes strength, nobody can use loneliness against you. Once fear becomes information, nobody can use fear against you. Do you see it? The game ends the moment your weaknesses stop behaving like weaknesses. The chains become weapons. The wounds become wisdom. The darkness becomes vision. And suddenly the very things that were supposed to destroy you become the reason you can't be destroyed. That's the receipt. That's the evidence. That's the file they never wanted opened. Not proof that somebody hurt you. Proof that hurting you failed. Not proof that life was unfair. Proof that unfairness couldn't stop you. Not proof that darkness existed. Proof that darkness couldn't own you.